Good morning. I'm very lucky in where I live here in Surrey that I'm quite close to a lot of pottery production sites or places where you can find dumped pottery. It's not quite Stoke-on-Trent, but it's pretty good. So what I'm going to do today, this morning, is go to 3 different sites which will cover 1,700 years of ceramic history. So first off, we're off to Roman Britain. Welcome to the Alice Holt Forest, home of the Alice Holt Roman greyware pottery industry. Here we are by a bus stop, and only in England would you build a bus stop on the remains of a Roman pottery industry. But most of the pottery we're going to look for is in the forest behind us. So we're going into here, hopefully won't get too stung by nettles. Nettles, the natural enemy of the pottery hunter. So here we are on the forest floor in the Alice Holt Forest, home of a huge Roman pottery industry which survived the whole time that the Romans were in Britain, from the 1st century right to the 4th century, producing greywares. So that's everyday pottery in a grey colour, obviously, made from red clay, which was reduced in the kiln to fire a grey colour. Mostly everyday pottery, but there were some fine wares such as beakers. They were decorated sometimes with simple scratched cross-hatch patterns, zones of white slip, sometimes burnishing as well were employed to decorate the pottery here. There was huge industry, so all around this area there are dumps of wasters scattered throughout the period. This particular spot where we are dates from about 270 to 350. It was excavated in the 1970s. Just behind the main road here, when they built the main road in the 19th century, they cut through a heap of wasters which I think was about 8 foot high. So we're talking a huge industry here which was widely traded. There's plenty of residual material, so we'll just get our fork and we will just disturb the leaf litter and we will pick up some shards of greyware, see what we can find. What do we have here? So yeah, that's a bit of Alice Holt greyware there. It looks to have some vague lines on it, might be the remains of some decoration. So we shall carry on. Actually here we don't even need to disturb the leaf litter because there's literally everywhere you look little chunks of grey pottery which are all wasters from the Alice Holt industry. So these little chunks of clay date from 270 to 350 AD, so a mere 1,700 years old. This one, quite a nice rim. You can see the typical rounded rim of Roman pottery. Greyware was also made in the medieval period. Obviously none of the Roman stuff is glazed, and the medieval stuff sometimes glazed or part glazed, and generally medieval pottery doesn't have a round rim. So someone said Roman pottery has wound whims, and that's a good way of remembering it. Quite a lot of greyware shards in this area. So you've got just sitting here another rim shard, and another one, a nice rounded rim, Roman rim. Possibly some burnishing there. I think that might be a zone of burnishing, a slightly different, darker colour on the clay there. much thicker, heavier piece of greyware, probably from a large storage jar. And there's lots of other promising bits in this area. Good, we found a whole lot more stuff. Some nice rim shards there, just projection just below the rim. Something with a sort of thumbing mark, might be the base of a handle, I guess. Let's find out. Nice chunky rim shard there. What else have we got? And finally a decorated shard there. It'll show up clearer when it's washed, but it's got some scratched lines there to make a crossed decoration on the pot, so that's very nice, and a whole lot of ordinary body shards. Again, I said some are surprisingly red, and they weren't properly reduced in the kiln. They've come out more the natural colour of the clay. And somewhere I think I had, yes, another example of a zone of slip. So you've got a white slip covering part of the pot to make decoration there. So very happy with those finds. Okay, that's the Roman element done. Let's move forward now, fast forward to the 17th century. The Potteries. Now there's an interesting street name. Let's see what we can find near here. Off to the next site. I had my bike stolen here once, so it's not all plain sailing being an amateur archaeologist. Well, I haven't been here for a while, and we seem to have a little bit of a nettle problem, so I'll just force my way through these and come out the other side, hopefully without too many stings. I think I should have brought a machete with me. Let's get through this lot. Honestly, what we go through to find a few bits of broken pottery. The end is in sight. Okay, we move forward from the Roman era to the 17th century. And we have Borderware pottery, which was produced along the Surrey-Hampshire borders. So we're just inside Hampshire, close to the Surrey border here. And this is a 17th century Borderware waste dump. When the housing estate, the Potteries, was built, and the motorway as well, they found a lot of wasters from 17th century pottery production. They think the kiln is nearby, but it was probably underneath the motorway, so it's probably destroyed when they built the motorway. You get a wide range of shapes, so you get the obvious pipkins, you also get mugs and platters, and skillets and chafing dishes, and also I found here a very rare form, the Schweinertopf, which is a little casserole pot on legs, which was a nice find. In terms of decoration, there is some rim decoration with sort of scratched wavy lines, some stamp decoration, little flower motifs, and some slipware, so we'll see if we can find any of that. But there's been a new drainage ditch cut in this area, which has brought up a lot of old wasters as well. The site was excavated in the 1970s, but they always leave something behind, and a little bit of new material has turned up. It's not stratified. Basically you can find 17th century pottery, and then underneath you can find crisp packets thrown away from the motorway, so it's a bit of a muddle. It's just been redeposited. So we'll do some digging and we'll see what turns up. That is a beautiful tiny rim from a very small vessel. I love that mottled green glaze that you get on this Borderware. White clay, maybe from a small ointment pot or something of that ilk. This is a nice find which has just turned up. It's the rim of a large plate or charger, but the rim is decorated with this scratched wavy line, sort of diagonal line on it. So that's a nice piece, good chunky piece there. Bit of clay just coming out of the edge. Oh, there we go. That's very nice. Splash of glaze on the outside, and the inside that's probably the base of a pot of some sort. In the last few minutes we have a red glaze shard with a hint of slipware, a slip decoration, just a little bit of yellow trailing there. You can see it doesn't seem to be... oh, that's better. Yeah, it's just a little bit of slip decoration on that shard. We have another part of a pipkin, so just the start of a foot there where it swells out on the base to make a foot. A little bit of clay pipe stem for a bit of relaxation for the potters. So a little pile of shards starting to appear. Red clay, green glaze. What else? Yeah, there we go. Olive coloured glaze. Oh no, that's nice. That is the rim of the pipkin, so you've got an external lid seating on that. I'll post a picture of a complete one, but that's quite a nice chunk of white clay with yellow glaze. The white clay was used up until about 1700 or just afterwards. Then it sort of died out, and other things such as stoneware and porcelain and other things took over. But the red clay industry in this area survives until the present day, and there is a pottery at Farnham. And so right through the 18th and 19th century, the red clay potters were still providing useful items and even arts and crafts items by the Edwardian period. So that's a nice find. See what else turns up. There's a little bit of clay there on the side of the... oh yes, that is a large, part of a large pot. Has got some glaze on it. Oh yeah, I see. It's like the base of a very large jar or pot in redware. That's nice. Little bits of pottery coming out there. Now that's something interesting, just coming out the side of the pit there. Let's tug it out gently. It's quite a large shard. trace of glaze, probably just a large part of a large pot. That's nice. Let's see what else. Is coming out. Now that's interesting because that's, I think, probably near the spout of a pipkin near the end. I would imagine that piece. So that'd be quite a large pipkin, and that's just broken off the tip of the spout. So that's coming out. Oh, there we go. Oh, beautiful. Green glaze, just the little rim of a small plate or platter. Very nice. Just hope I didn't drop it. I do like that mottled green glaze, that's very attractive. More little chunks of Borderware, early 17th century, early to mid 17th century this site. Little bits coming up everywhere. Another rim. More little bits of white Borderware. Something here looks a bit like the spout of a pipkin, and it is the spout of a pipkin, which is rather nice. So that's where it's come off the body, and there's the little spout there. So that's rather nice, like that. Now these shards with rilling on the surface come from pipkins. Very distinctive rilling on the body of the tripod pipkin. I'll show you a photograph in a moment so you can see that. Now this shard is very nice. You can just see, I think, some crisscross incised decoration, and it's from a mug. So it's brown glazed, and that is the decoration that they would put on the side of a mug. So it's nice to find another mug fragment there. Another bit of clay sticking out of the side there, and just a nice rim shard and Borderware. So here we are at the last dig of the day. Unfortunately it started raining quite heavily, but we are at the 20th century dump, which featured in my last video. If you watched that, have a look if you haven't. As the weather's not so good, I'll have a quick dig here and see what we can find to complement the 17th century and the Roman pottery which we've already dug up today. Alright, all washed and separated. This is my haul from the day. So at the front we have Roman material from the Holt forest. Then we have some Borderware waster shards from the 17th century. And then we have some more recent early 20th century material from the dump there. So looking at the Alice Holt material, we've got pieces with white slip on them as decoration. We have some decorated shards, so that is just some simple scored decoration there. And interestingly, we had some decoration, not where I was expecting it, on the inside face of the vessel. That's the exterior and this is the interior. And you can just see some crosshatch, typical Roman lattice decoration there, which would have decorated the inside of a bowl, which is quite unusual. That presumably the base of a handle from a flagon, like that. A very typical rim with a projection just below the rim there, so a couple of rim shards. Two different sorts of fabric, one with obvious inclusions of quartz, looking a bit medieval there, and then a finer fabric with no, well that's the coarse one, a finer fabric with no obvious tempering apart from a bit of sand. Then moving on to the Borderware, 17th century material, apart from that obviously. We had parts of pipkins, so we have a spout, a foot, part of a rim with an external lid seating, and also some rilled decoration or grooving around the body, which you can see all very typical of pipkins. Some mug fragments, so part of a base, brown glaze. And this is actually part of a rim, but you can see that sort of crosshatch impression, and there is the rim there on the top. So that would come from a nicely decorated mug, a picture of which will follow. Decoration around the rim of flagons and plates, just a simple zigzag there, or around the edge of the rim, just simple rouletting there. And moving on to the early 20th century, having confidently said you don't find pipes on 20th century dumps, I did find a pipe. So there are a little sort of knobbly one. It's got some maker's mark, but I can't read what it says there. A bottle by, nothing to do with Sainsbury, as I was trying to say at the time, Allen and Hanbury's Limited, and then part of Timothy White storage container or flagon there. Timothy White's was a supermarket which existed right up until when I was a boy, and then closed down. More of the 1914 W. Adams & Co. leadless glaze. This shows the profile of the whole mixing bowl, I guess. Other things, part of a German stoneware mineral water flagon, lots of other bits of that there. Part of a ginger beer, presumably made at Bourne, Denby, and various other transfer printed items, marmalade or jam pots with distinctive rims to hold a cover, and often like that, stoneware. An intriguing moulded part of a, well, I don't know what, part of a flower pot maybe. So anyway, a nice haul for a day's digging, and we shall see what else we can find at these sites in future.